This is Dava-Lee with your MOWEEP Legislative Wrap-Up for 2025. This video will be just a little bit longer, so buckle up and here we go. We'll start with an overview of the session. This session wasn't quite as busy for us as past sessions have been, although by these numbers you would never guess that. Between the House and the Senate, there were about 2,600 bills that were filed, and just under 200 made our list. We opposed a little over 70, we supported around 60, and we watched or amended or remained neutral on a little bit over 50 bills. So that's a little low for us, which was kind of good. All of the bills that we monitored had to have some action on them theoretically. So as you can see by the final legislation status, most of the bills that we monitored never really moved. Many of them were assigned to a committee, they got a hearing, and if they got voted out of the committee, they tended this session to cross over. Very few died on the calendar in the House where they started. And some of them got added to other bills that were TAFP'd. TAFP stands for Truly Agreed to and Finally Passed, and those are the bills that move over to the governor's desk for either signature or veto. Spoiler alert, he's probably going to sign them. But some of these bills did not get standalone passed, but they are added to things that were TAFP'd. Our final positions on the bills, they may have changed over time. A couple of bills did, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we were pretty evenly divided between supporting bills, opposing bills, and monitoring bills this session. MOWEEP monitors the votes every session, and the next few slides are going to go over the voting results. When we monitor votes, we don't just monitor final votes by the main body. We also vote committee votes, oversight votes, and fiscal oversight votes, especially on bills that we are very closely monitoring. As you can see from this first slide, we only had one representative that was two representatives that were 100% aligned, Representatives Joe Dahl and Mark Sharp. And we had several reps that were they were in the 90 range on alignment with the way MOWEEP would have voted. The chart on the right shows the different votes for different topics that we covered. And if it looks like they're low in alignment, that's because it is including all Democratic and Republican votes. The education vote was a little bit closer than I thought it was going to be. DEI came in about where I thought it would. And the other votes are votes that were votes that we thought we might monitor, like budget votes and bills like the St. Louis City takeover. As you can see, the Democrats aligned with us much better than the Republicans did. But this session, for the first time ever, we don't have any senators or representatives that were 0% aligned with us. So everybody aligned with us on some level. There was only one real surprise, and that was Representative Marlene Terry. She's a Democrat who only voted with us 68% of the time, and those were on the education bills. She voted in favor of vouchers and open enrollment at every chance she got. This slide will show the similar information on from the previous page in a different format. It's a more visual representation of the topics that we covered and the voting alignment. As you can see, House Dems aligned with us more frequently and consistently than House GOP. That is not a huge surprise. The next two slides are going to show the voting alignment for every House rep and every Senate rep. We're working on getting this out in a more digestible format for you, but you may be able to pause it and see the alignment of most of the reps. GOP is in red and the Democrats are in blue for a shorthand. And here are the Senate votes. Started the 2025 session with several legislative priorities, knowing that we were probably going to be in opposition to many of the bills. We'll start there. We looked at bills that dealt with divisive issues, CRT, and curriculum. Any bills that fell under that category stalled in committee. We looked at anti-DEI bills, and most of those stalled in committee, but one made it all the way, but it stalled in the Senate. We looked at some anti-trans bills, and of those bills, one of them was TAFP'd, and we'll go to the governor's desk. HJR 73 had anti-transgender health care components inside of the abortion bill. Parents' Bill of Rights stalled in committee. Public dollars to non-public entities stalled in committee and standalone bills, but $50 million for vouchers was included in HB 12 in the budget. School choice was stalled in the Senate by a filibuster and never got brought back up. Diminishing reproductive health care, again, HJR 73 passed. Voter suppression, we jumped in on those with some partners, and SB 22 was signed into law, able to change the ballot language process and make it easier to be deceitful. And there were a lot more anti-LGBTQ plus bills, but they were either mitigated through amendment or they didn't cross the finish line. There were a few bills that we supported. There were several iterations of the Crown Act, which is particularly impactful for African Americans, and particularly African American women, regarding hair texture and style. That is now against the law to discriminate against people based on that. It was added to SB 160, which is a bill that started out as a bad bill that we testified against, but then through the hard work of Promo and some other organizations, that bill was mitigated and in order to protect students from discrimination on campuses. If an organization discriminates, then they can lose their status as an organization. It also included the Crown Act on it. And then there were a few bills that would protect women of color with maternal health care and missing and murdered women. Those stalled in the House, and the child care tax credit got further than it ever has before, but it was stopped in the Senate by a filibuster led by Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman of the 22nd District. She decided that that was less important than gun legislation and stalled it, and it never got brought back up again. If you followed our weekly emails and our calls to action, some of these bill numbers are going to be familiar to you. These aren't just by topic, these are specific bills. House Bill 711, open enrollment, by Representative Pollitt, stalled in the Senate after a filibuster when Senator Bratton added divisive concepts, anti-CRT, and a Parents' Bill of Rights to it. Senate Bill 160 by Senator Hudson started out as a bill that would allow discrimination on the campus, but again, it was mitigated and included the Crown Act, and it was TAFP'd. Senate Bill 68, which started out, it's Henderson's bill that was a device ban bill to which we were able to add an amendment protecting ELL students, turned into a safety omnibus with some other good features on it, and it was TAFP'd. House Bill 742 by Representative Baker was defunding DEI throughout the state, and it stalled in the Senate after a filibuster. Representative Baker resigned shortly before the end of session to join the Trump administration. Senate Bill 38 and House Bill 284 by Washington and Prouty, respectively, were the Crown Acts. They were added in some form or another to Senate Bill 160 and TAFP'd. Senate Bill 49-118 was a chaplain bill by Senator Black and Moon, and we thought it was dead, but like a zombie, it just rose up on Wednesday and got TAFP'd. Senate Bill 10 was Huff's bill that was a fiscal bill on sunsets for tax credits, but Senator Bratton changed the name of the bill to just sunsets and added a removal of the sunset for transgender healthcare and transgender athletics. Passage of that bill would have made those bans permanent. It stalled in the House. HJR 73 was an abortion rights bill, and it had a transgender health component to it, so we began following it. Unfortunately, it was TAFP'd on the last day of session in a pretty unusual way in the Senate. House Bill 567 was a workers' rights bill that we were following the lead for Jobs with Justice on, and it got TAFP'd in the Senate on the last day. In order to get those bills through, the Senate decided that they were so important that they would employ the nuclear option, called a PQ, calling the previous question, which they do in the House all the time, but the Senate never does it, knowing that if they did that, that would end everything else in the session. And so shortly after 6 p.m., they passed both those bills and adjourned for the session. Just to be clear, these are the bills that cross the finish line and will likely become law. There are more bills this session than have been since MOEP has been tracking legislation. The Senate got along and the House got along pretty well until the very last week. So as you can see, these are the bills that we've already gone over that have absolutely crossed the finish line. The only one that's new on here is Senate Bill 22 that we were following through our partners at MOVPC and Jobs with Justice, and that would make it easier to be duplicitous on ballot language. This next section is about the difference that MOEP made during the session. It's about our activities. It's about your activities. Submitting written testimony, contacting your legislatures, following our calls to action, and an occasional trip to Jefferson City. When it came to on-the-record testimony, MOEP really showed up. There was a lot of online testimony, and over 10% of it was provided just by MOEP members. And as you can see, of the online testimony that was produced for the House and the Senate, almost 90% of it aligned with our position. MOEP used a new system this year to track engagement that wasn't done through the official witness testimony system, and it worked beautifully. We were able to increase our engagement by a lot, and the system counts duplicates. So I took out the duplicates because I'm me. And when you look at it, we had 504 members answer a call to action. This is more than we've ever had. We had between 1,700 and 2,000 responses to calls to action, which is more than we've ever had. And we had over 12,000 messages sent to individual lawmakers. And this system is fantastic. And thank you all for the calls to action. If you look at the numbers, MOEP did a pretty good job this session. We went to one rally sponsored by Jobs with Justice and Abortion Action. We traveled to Jefferson City 10 of the 18 weeks. We spent 14 days and testified at hearings in Jeff City. We had 39 testimony opportunities in person. We had 9,085 witnesses on the record, 5,586 witnesses shared our opinion, and we had 12,326 additional contacts through every action. MOEP started in 2021, and the first legislative session we started doing anything in was 2022, but we were not tracking legislation with any sort of real system or fidelity until the next session in 2023. So if you look at our historical data, which goes back to 2023, you can see how much growth we've had where it counts on record testimony and off the record witness engagement. And that is simply because of you guys using every action almost every time we asked. And between these two charts, you can really see how much MOEP has grown this year, and we really hope it continues. Here are some final thoughts as we wrap up the 2025 regular session of the Missouri Legislature. We had some big losses this session that came at the very end, and they were gut punches to be sure, mainly because of the way that they were accomplished. And that was hard to take. And we are still feeling our feelings and working on trying to figure out how to move forward. This is the first session that MOEP had an amendment added to anything. And it was also the first session that any bill or any part of any bill that we supported actually crossed the finish line. So in these dark times, it's important that we hold on to that little tiny pinpoint of light so we can see our way through the darkness and move forward. We're leaving you with calls to action. Did you think you'd get off that easy just because session is over? No. Encourage 5 friends or more to join MOEP at MissouriEquity.com. Donate to MOEP at the same website and stay engaged no matter how you do it. Letters to the editor, protests, small groups, And a good way to stay engaged is to check out the MOWEEP Facebook to find out ways to volunteer for tornado relief in St. Louis City. Our community is hurting and we need everything. We need people now more than ever. This session is drawn to a close, so use the time in between sessions to rest, regroup, and recharge. The great Ella Fitzgerald said, just don't give up trying to do what you really want to do. Whether it's love and inspiration, I don't think you can go wrong. And she was right. Thank you for following MOWEEP this session. Thank you for listening and following these updates. It has been my pleasure to bring them to you. I would say I liked 99% of the days. And remember, the work continues. Stay tuned.